Those poor children. My goodness. God have mercy. Oh my goodness. And who is it? Oh my God. Transgender. We're going to begin in just a couple moments. Gian says the audio is good. Folks, so heartbreaking. Those poor school children. Killed praying in church. But not when you have, we have some great guests that we're going to talk to in just a moment. Both Mark Mix, National Right to Work, the president of the committee and foundation, and also Jacqueline Stapp from Make America Fentanyl Free. But this individual, how many times, folks, in Rhode Island, hi there, Catherine. Again, folks, we also condolences go out to our friend Carol with the passing of her husband, Gary. But in Rhode Island, they tried to normalize it. And the media, they're enablers in it, to me. The media are enablers of it. In the Providence Journal, they've done extensive coverage how Donald Anderson became Donnie Anderson. And they try to normalize this transgender behavior. And there's clearly nothing normal about it. And now we find that the shooter, and I don't know about everyone, but when I attended St. Paul School, the first couple of years, there used to be mass every morning that the kids would attend. And then eventually, for whatever reason, that faded away. But in the beginning, there he is. There's the school shooter. So terrible. Yep, there's Debbie across the border, Mendon, Mass. Hola. Just terrible, folks. Pray for the souls of these little children. And he has a video he also wanted to take out. Here's a shocker, President Trump. So there's no rationale. There's no reason. I know. And now this is a call to arms, but of various transgender individuals are calling out other members of the community to take action. It makes no sense at all. Absolutely horrific. These children were praying in church, in a pew. And by the way, for all of these, we'll find out, how did someone like this get the weapon? And he has a manifesto and a video, and he posted on YouTube. Absolutely terrible. There is the face. But it's normalized. And I want to talk about, in Rhode Island, you have that Reverend Donald Anderson, who at age 70 suddenly, I've talked about it, suddenly the hair's in a ponytail, and then he's wearing a dress. And the local media celebrated him. The local Progressive Democrat Party, he became the chair of the Progressive Women Caucus. And then because he changed his name from Donald to Donnie, it's just so, and no one steps forward and says, wow, that's kind of bizarre behavior that this guy suddenly, he was married, he had 2 children who are mortified by this, but I'll say this, he was celebrated by the local media. Oh, the courage. Providence Journal did a full expose story on him. Oh, the courage he's showing here. No one thought, boy, that's rather unusual. Gee, maybe there's something odd about that. Maybe it shouldn't be celebrated. Reverend Donald, no, it's Donnie from now on. And like no one stops to say, hey, that seems rather unusual behavior. Nope, not celebrated. Expose. Mark Patinkin, Providence Journal. Oh, the courage he's showing. Remarkable courage. Terrible. Well, there it is. Well, he's not celebrated on this program. I'll tell you that. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, we do have some special guests, and we're going to mix it in with news. Not only this is horrible. This is horrible of this school shooting, but this business that transgender community is basically calling out other transgender around the country to take action. And of course, Massachusetts is Massachusetts, which is so twisted, but they're calling for transgender to move to Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, Governor McKee, Rhode Island under Roger Williams, we are the transgender state. Like, well, I don't even know what that means anymore. What does that mean? You're the transgender state. Folks, this portion of our program on this Wednesday, those poor children praying in church, killed by a transgender. It's brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Remember, they're a full-scale nursery, and right now they have delicious corn, they have fresh vegetables, delicious peaches. They're open 7 days a week. Gift certificates are available. Stop in and see them. And they grind it. Folks, they're open right 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. I share their Facebook page. Maybe if you're coming back from the South County beaches, they're right on Route 4. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, check out DePietro.com, brought to you by the Coesit Inn. We do have body cam. Of course, they don't mention that, Catherine. Body cam we now have of the Cranston police immediately got this nut involved with the hammer attack. That was on Saturday. We're the only ones that have the footage right now of the police body cam, and then we're also the only ones that have footage of the suspect outside when police arrested him. Check it out on DePietro.com. Brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember, as we say, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. So this is just breaking. This is just breaking. Now, we're going to speak to Mark Mix coming up in just a moment. But Robin Westman, this is terrible. He had on a magazine for his weapon. It's sick, and I'm not going to, but he filmed a video, and he has killed Trump on it. He's a Catholic school gunman. It's trans, and it is, folks. There it is. The Catholic school gunman, Robin Westman. This is in Minneapolis. Who also had, I don't even like talking about this, but we have to because it's the news. So it is, that's what is breaking right now, that he also had a thing. And it's so disturbing when you see that he has a magazine, Kill Donald Trump, and then also signaling out the children. So like many of you, but we have to face this. We have to face that there's someone out there like this. And he has a whole YouTube video, multiple videos on social media. He hates Christians. He put on one, "Where is your God?" on one of the magazines. Just sick for the children. I don't even like seeing this. And then begin shooting outside of a church. So, but as I've stated, there's a lot of things wrong with the state of both Rhode Island and Massachusetts, because our audience in Massachusetts continues to grow. And it's getting larger and larger, partly because of the Karen Reed trial, but then also partly because of our coverage with the Rehoboth situation. And then also, as many people in Massachusetts keep saying, you're the only one that, tells it the way it is, that actually gives us the real news of what's going on. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Call them today in Rhode Island, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. And remember, they're always online at propaneplus.com. So we have two guests, and I'm going to juggle in and out. What you're seeing on the screen, and the reason I even just mentioned that is the alleged shooter in Minneapolis, school shooting, and more information is coming out, and it's a transgender, and it is absolutely, it is just horrific what is going on. But we do have some guests, and one of them is a very familiar name to us. And I'll tell you what you're seeing play out, because we're going to jump around a little bit during this time. But of all the talk that is going on right now, as far as the Revolution Wind and the offshore wind, and the guests yesterday we had on that just lit it up of how expensive it is. And as I have talked about, it hasn't got any coverage. But as they were negotiating with this company, one of the things they said to them was, all of your workers have to be union workers. And think about that. That's insanity. And all it did was jack up the cost. And you have people like Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and others saying, these aren't just jobs. These are union jobs. Well, these are union jobs. Folks, someone who has spoken out, National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, National Right to Work Committee, and the president of that committee and foundation is our friend, and the guy is just a legend, and it is Mark Mix. Good afternoon, Mark.
John, it's good to see you. Thanks for the opportunity. This is a new way for us to talk. It used to be the phone and recorded. It's exciting to see you doing this and reporting the news live and getting out to those people in Massachusetts too. So well done.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark, I want to give you the platform, and I know I normally have you on right around Labor Day, but I don't know if you were following how locally they've cut off the Trump administration. They've shut down this offshore wind project. It's wildly expensive. It's killing the wildlife. But beneath the surface, several years ago, they said to the company, the Rhode Island leaders, you have to have organized labor for your entire workforce, because then their campaign contributions, and it becomes like a giant money laundering situation. And then you have state funds and federal funds. And one of the biggest things of why they're objecting, why it's paused, not because it's the most expensive source of energy, but because the organized labor representatives have the politicians, around the throat saying, you got to get this thing going again. But Mark, you take the floor.
Yeah, John, this is not a one-off. This is really kind of the policy, and it was the policy for the Biden administration over the last 4 years, using huge amounts of taxpayer money to basically prop up organized labor in projects just like this. In fact, the Department of Energy was sending out surveys to companies that were applying for these energy subsidies, whether it be windmills or electric buses or electric batteries, saying, hey, one of the conditions of you getting the government money is to have a union contract or to be neutral in a union organizing campaign. So what that did was a lot of companies, in fact, one company, a bus company in Georgia, got something like $490 million to build electric buses. And the only condition was they had to stay neutral in a union organizing drive. And so they basically sacrificed their workforce to the unions. And now the company, obviously, electric buses aren't a big thing anymore. And Trump has decided that, and the unions have decided that the electric vehicle is not the best way for them to keep their people working in the marketplace, whether it be for automobiles or for buses. But John, this was the finger on the thumb of the scale on public policy, using taxpayer money, using executive branch power, not even legislative power, John. This was the executive branch saying you must comply with these conditions. And the number one condition was be a union contractor, basically, and concede your employees to the union. I mean, and even though, despite the fact that all of this was happening through the Biden administration, union density actually decreased during those 4 years.
Now, Mark, right now, President Trump, he's making great strides it's really for the workers. And yes, he's really got the unions on the defensive.
Yeah, indeed. And, most of that work is really important work in the government sector. He basically has decided that the federal government will no longer be negotiating with unions over terms and conditions of employment. And obviously, I think he's got 6 lawsuits pending by the American Federation of Government Employees, the National Treasury Employee Union, trying to block these orders that says, look, we're not going to be bargaining over kind of national security issues with agencies that have a national security profile. We're not going to be negotiating with unions with these people. And so he's withdrawn from those areas. And the unions have just gone crazy about it, because one of the final frontiers, John, you and I have discussed this before, and you see it in Rhode Island, you see it in Massachusetts, you see it in the Northeast, where union officials really, their primary strength now is the government sector, not the private sector. It's the government sector.
Yes.
And the federal government is probably the easiest game for the union officials to kind of maneuver in, because the politicians, to your point, are looking for that payback after they prescribe these policies that empower union officials. Then the political contributions come in, and it's a vicious cycle, and it's damaging not only to workers, but to taxpayers.
Now, Mark, what's also happening, I believe right now, Wisconsin and Virginia, very important actions taking place right now.
Yeah, two things. One, Virginia, it looks like Abigail Spanberger, who is the member of Congress, who is now the Democrat nominee for governor, she's indicated by her behavior in the House of Representatives, not only once, but twice, voted for the repeal of all right-to-work laws across the country. The 26 states that have right-to-work laws that are very simple, they say you can continue to work despite the fact that unions would say you have to pay us in order to keep your job. The right-to-work states will not contemplate that. They don't interfere with your right to join a union if you want to, but you can't lose your job if you don't pay dues or fees. The legislature, the House of Delegates, and the state Senate have been talking about the repeal of Virginia's right-to-work law that got passed in 1947 and has given Virginia an economic advantage over many states that don't have right-to-work. In fact, CNBC, 3 of the last 5 years, has said that Virginia is the best place to do business, and right-to-work is part of that recipe. Spanberger has been called out on this, and she says, well, wait a minute. I'm not going to say I want to repeal right to work. I just want to reform it. But the election will decide. Once she's safely elected, we think the Democrats will go after repeal of right to work, forcing Virginia workers to pay union dues in order to keep a job. In Wisconsin, the legislature is out there not talking about repeal of right to work, but the court system is thinking about repealing Scott Walker's Act 10. And John, we probably talked about this back in 2011, where he reformed the government bargaining process and saved taxpayers in Wisconsin something north of $30 billion since it's been enacted. And the court, the unions found this little example in the legislation where they exempted police and firefighters. We recommended against this, but they did it anyway. They think the way to honor firefighters and police officers is to make sure they're still in unions, which we disagree with. But a judge in Dane County found this little variation of this carve out and claimed a 14th Amendment equal protection argument and said, the whole thing needs to be struck down. Instead of severing that exemption, they're going to try to take down the whole thing, which would put the whole union hierarchy back in power in Wisconsin, which is something that would be detrimental to the taxpayers and the workers in Wisconsin.
Mark, as we're approaching Labor Day, what's the best way that people can log on, support your organization, learn more about your tremendous organization?
Well, John, thanks for helping us get the message out about these issues, and we appreciate that. Obviously, if you have a question about your legal rights, you can go to the foundation's website, nrtw.org, nrtw.org, and there's all kinds of information there about your rights in the workplace vis-a-vis unionization. You can also contact an attorney. We represent employees for free. We have about 260 active cases at any given time on behalf of employees trying to exercise their rights in the workplace. If they're interested in legislation, whether it be in Congress or Boston or Rhode Island or whatever it is, they can go to the committee's website, nrtwc.org, and find out information about the legislation we're tracking across the country and in Congress.
Folks, again, he is Mark Mix. Mark, great to see you. We're going to do this again. Happy Labor Day, and and thanks for taking the time to speak to us.
John, my privilege, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. Good to see you.
All right, folks, there he is, Mark Mix. I'm telling you, the work that they do is just nothing short of fantastic. Now, we have another guest coming up right now, bottom of the hour, and this is all part of the new rollout of the Trump administration, regarding fentanyl. So we're going to talk to her, but then we're also going to talk about this breaking news, as now we're learning that apparently, and this is so disgraceful, this shooter in Minneapolis happens to be a transgender shooter. And there's very disturbing video and basically almost calling for, there's the transgender shooter, that for the transgender community to stand up and enact war against not only organized religion Catholics, but also against children in schools, which is just terrible. What's also interesting about this is this individual was outside the church. outside the church, just shooting through the windows. We think so much about having security to prevent people from coming inside, but then you get someone like this who then stands outside. It's just absolutely horrific what is happening here. But as I've stated, locally, we've seen this trend where the local media, and specifically the progressive Democrats, they have said, Rhode Island is the transgender state. Roger Williams was transgender. Rhode Island needs to be the beacon, attracting transgender from all over the country. It's complete insanity. Look at the violence. Another transgender shooter. These poor children killed in a pew, having mass. They would have mass every Wednesday before school. I mentioned when I first attended St. Paul's School, you used to have the kids who'd go to mass before school. And then for whatever reason, they got rid of that. Folks, this portion of our program, though, brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Remember, they are the experts. They specialize in residential design. Arch Design Builders. If you're thinking right now of a new kitchen or a new bathroom or a new basement or a deck, or you have a special project, set up that free consultation with my friends Ed and Roxanne, family owned and operated, high-end, custom build customer service. Arch Design Builders. Family business, prioritize integrity, quality, trust. Roxanne goes the extra mile. Arch Design Builders. Set up that free meeting, that free consultation, 401-218-9707 for your kitchen, for your bathroom, for your basement, deck, or special project. ARCH, Arch Design Builders, and I share their Facebook page. This story is just so horrifying, and we're getting more details about it. And these children just, is there anything you think of a young little child, man in his early 20s, Robin is the name. There's the shooter, a transgender shooter. It's just so horrific of what has happened here and taken place. I'm just trying to get the latest now. Oh, God. Jen Psaki. When kids are getting shot in the pews at a Catholic school mass and your crime plan is to have National Guard put mulch down around D.C., maybe rethink your strategy. What is wrong with them? I don't understand these people. But I want to just get the latest here. Oh, let's see what McKee says. Gun violence in schools, every parent's worst nightmare. Our hearts go out to the community. He's the same one that's trying to take away and, 2 children dead, open fire during mass, first week of class. In a Catholic school, that should not be also seen. The Catholic religion, of which I'm Roman, has been under attack, and especially in our area, whether it's that Reverend Donnie Anderson or whether it is that Rachel Miller or Tiara Mack. There's a constant war against the Catholic religion. But this transgender shooter, but look at how is Jen Psaki of MSNBC is attacking President Trump on the day that they find that the shooter also had President Trump's name written on some magazines for the weapons. Do you see, folks? And we're seeing it firsthand. There is no elected official, Rhode Island or Massachusetts, that represents my thoughts, or I don't think your thoughts or values, or represents us. In Massachusetts, you have Markey of Elizabeth Warren. In Rhode Island, you have Sheldon Whitehouse and Seth Magaziner. Governor McKee, Maura Healey. Governor Healey, Massachusetts is going to be the trans capital of the United States. And Governor McKee says, well, hold on. Rhode Island's going to give you a run for that. Why are they glorifying it? Why are they glorifying it? People like Senator Tiara Mack. But the worst is the Rhode Island Progressive Women's Caucus. They made that Donnie Anderson the chair of the Women's Progressive Caucus. Folks, in Rhode Island, when you have people like Representative Teresa Tanzi and Val Lawson and Justine Caldwell and Bridget Valadair and Matos, these people try to normalize that behavior, and they go after anyone that speaks out against it. Senator Mack, Enrique Sanchez, that's Sam Bell, Seth Magaziner, all trans should move to Rhode Island. What is that supposed to mean? All trans should move to Rhode Island. Roger Williams had long hair. He was trans. That was the custom of the time. That doesn't mean that he was trans. God, they want to rewrite things. Folks, don't forget about J. Perry Paving. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, free estimate for any project. It's letter J, J. Perry Paving. Call them 401-732-1730. And remember, if you're a veteran, no one has a better package for you than J. Perry Paving. 401-732-1730. I mean it. We are at a crossroads right now, I think, in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It is, Eric. It is. Look at this. What? Oh, no, that's someone else. This is the one. Why do trans people make you Republicans so mad? Aren't you the person that messaged me, Michael, that you want help posting because your aunt is missing? And now you're going after Republicans? Really? Is that where we're at? I agree with Eric. It absolutely is. If you're asking, you don't insult the audience. The school shooter in Minneapolis, it turns out, is trans. That's where that comes from. So, no, that's a double negative. I'm not attacking no one. That's a double negative. It would be, I'm not attacking anyone. I know. Yeah. I'll let the group deal with instead of commenting here, I think you should drive to go look for your relative who is missing, apparently. So that's what I would be doing, Michael. I would be, yes, very much so. All right, we do have our guests coming up, but no, it can't be ignored. This is not this is who the shooter is. This is the shooter in Minneapolis. And wait till you see the YouTube video and everything else. There's something wrong with the mindset that's disguised that way. And why such an effort to recruit children to join the cause? And you have people like Representative Teresa Tanzi, Senator Tiara Mack. I think, oh no, it's in the Congress. I think Rhode Island has a trans member of some council. I forget where. It's tough to keep track. Listen, I think it speaks volumes that what the Progressive Caucus did as far as the situation regarding the fact that they would make Reverend Donald Anderson the chairperson of the Women's Progressive Caucus. because he started wearing a dress and put his hair in a ponytail and changed his pronoun to she, them, or something like that, and then changed the name from Donald to Donnie. All right, let's stay on track here. Let's reel it in. Because what's also interesting about our next guest is Rhode Island is about to have a Democrat running for governor who made millions off of opioids, who made millions off of OxyContin. And there's something to look forward to. Folks, don't forget about Watson Materials. Watson Materials, the largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, is Watson Materials. Now call Sean. You can request a quote, 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone. Watson Materials, the most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, is Watson Materials. Let's talk about something positive. Let's talk about having your children in a safe place. Let's talk about having your children in a safe place for preschool or before and after school care. I'm talking about Kids Club on the Pike. That's right. They're right off of 295 on Plainfield Pike. You can call them at 401-443-5336, located on the Cranston-Johnson line off Plainfield Pike. It's Kids Club on the Pike, and they have great security. When I've gone there, they have great security. They're even on the second floor. Kids Club on the Pike, birthday party venue, but also before and after school care and preschool. You can depend on Kids Club on the Pike. Call them, get your child enrolled there for preschool or before and after school care at Kids Club on the Pike. Now, let me just check again to get the latest now. Obviously, this school shooting in Minneapolis is without question, obviously. The shooter, armed with a rifle, shotgun, and a pistol, approached the side of the church and shot through. I don't know how you. The way to stop that is this individual should not have been in possession of several things, a weapon. You know, the other thing about many of the transgender is after they convince them to convert, they're actually even more unhappy than before they did it, before they changed, so to speak. So this individual that has been identified, and you watch the way that is downplayed. 2 young children shot dead in the pews, 17 injured, 14 children. And picked out because it was a Catholic school. Robin Westman had killed Trump on a magazine. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. And one of the things they want to do in Massachusetts is ban cell phones in schools. I don't know about that. Think of that. I mean, think of then something goes wrong. And then a second shooting, a trans adult targeted young Christian children. John Hassan writes, stop affirming this mental illness. Terrible. Manifesto, hateful, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and anti-Trump messages. Where is your God? This one's for the children. Sick. Absolutely demands mocking Holy Communion, demanding an end to Israel. Israel must fall. Release the list. No remorse. Terrible. You know, I I watched the alleged Minnesota Catholic school shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, a transgender 22-year-old. His manifesto includes pride flags and a gun with "Kill Trump" etched into it. Oh, my God. Very, very terrible. Now, again, a big, admittedly, folks, what we need to find out is exactly how this individual was able to get the weapon that was used in weapons. And then also need to find out many times in these situations, there are red flags. But I just want to address this business of that, and it has been, no matter what anyone says, it has been normalized, or I should say, they try to normalize it. Just like this, as I said, the Reverend Donnie Anderson, and the local media was fawning over this individual who was really just, I mean, and the damage in lecturing to children, of that this is, and I want to just pull up the photo, as if the local media didn't say, boy, that's a little unusual. No, it was, oh, I still remember the Providence Journal piece, Mark Patinkin, the bravery show. I don't know what you're talking about, the bravery. What do you see when I pull this up? And then, as I mentioned, Justin Katz and I, we would talk about that Reverend Donnie Anderson was then even the elected as first trans chair of Rhode Island Democrat women. I mean, it's just so whacked. Rhode Island Democrat Women Caucus makes history, new group chair. What? You're just enabling it. Oh my goodness. Warwick Beacon, Reverend Donnie Anderson shares experience as transgender woman. The Women's Caucus. That's who the chair became. I don't understand what they're talking about. I just don't. Why it was so important. What a headline. But again, locally, it was Rhode Island Women's History. Meet Donnie Anderson. Oh, my goodness, folks. I don't understand. There's no pushback. There's no pushback. And what I mean by that is no one in our local media, not one, the Journal, Globe, what have you, but no one says, gee, this could be confusing to a child. That's why I have the utmost respect for Nicole Solis, who continues. There's a boycott against her. They just refuse, the local media. They refuse to give her any type of coverage, and this whole business of trying to, and I don't know how else to describe it other than that they try to normalize it. Let me just pull up our own, and then I'll remove the shooter. There it is. Or I should say, there is the minister. So this is Rhode Island. There is the Progressive Women's Democrat chair, Reverend Donnie Anderson. Yeah. Waltz is the catalyst. Yep. The first thing, I hate to admit it, but the first thing, when they said that there was a school shooting in Minneapolis, the first thing I thought of was Waltz saying that he was friends with the school shooter. So let me stay on track here. There's the Reverend. Again, local media, so brave. Oh, just a profile and courage. I think given awards, I don't understand, admittedly. I want to admit, I don't understand how if you are normal in Rhode Island, how these people continue to be members of the Democrat Party. I just don't get it. Folks, just a reminder about ServPro. Remember, when disaster strikes, everything changes. ServPro of Providence. Fast, thorough, professional. Call them 401 941 5500. If you have a fire or you have water damage or smoke damage or mold, ServPro Providence, 401 941 5500. Fast, thorough, professional. ServPro Providence. And again, you never know when disaster is going to strike, but they're available 24/7. You can depend on ServPro Providence. Folks, again, call them in the event of an emergency, and that's what it's going to be. Call ServPro of Providence. And as I mentioned, they are available 24/7, 401 941 5500. Well, this is very sad news, as I mentioned, on this Wednesday. It's the beginning of school, and suddenly now you have a transgender shooter in Minneapolis with a bizarre manifest who decided to go and take out young children and others by firing into a church. It is sick. It should not be normalized. This is another example. But I also mentioned, so there's the person identified as the shooter. And there's clearly, when you'll see some of the video and some of these other things about it, that it's really just disgraceful. But as I mentioned, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, there is a concerted effort of progressives to try to say this is totally normal. So a guy is 70 years old and he's been married and had 2 children, and locally he is suddenly celebrated because he said, "Oh no, I want to I'm now Donnie. I'm no longer Donald, and I'm going to wear a dress and put my hair in a ponytail." So, Michael, you're commenting a lot, and I really think that you should focus your efforts instead of commenting here. I really think you should try to find your relative who is tragically missing. Think of this time that could be spent looking for her instead of commenting here. So that's what you need to do. That's what, remember, everyone has sometimes a focus. That's what your focus should be. So instead of sitting here commenting, I suggest you go out and look for your relative, and hopefully you can bring her to safety. So this is someone, they say missing, but it's people who choose to live on the streets for various reasons. And this is not even about affordable housing. This is about drugs. This is about drug dependency. This is about mental illness. For people to think that they can function and it's normal, that people want to live under an underpass, and the family goes along with it. Yep. That's what I suggest you do, and I'm trying to be nice about it. So, but that's where you want to direct your efforts. You want to direct your efforts there. So that is not on the screen. That is not the school shooter. That is Donald Anderson, or Donnie Anderson, as we're now all supposed to say. And much like I've talked about, I was at William Hall Library when there was a guest speaker that Nicole Salas had to talk about how they were trying to bring this into schools. And Nicole had talked about that it was they were indoctrination with these children. And I'll never forget, it was William Hall Library that used to be my library, and I covered part of it. And that was also the night that the former mayor of Woonsocket, Susan Menard, was found dead. But at this particular function, this individual, Donald Anderson, known as Donnie Anderson, I think I had him on the radio many years ago, but he was standing there, right, in the dress and the ponytail. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. It's perfectly normal for boys to wear dresses, and it's perfectly normal but girls don't want to be boys. Like, going on. And you have all the earthy, crunchy crowd standing there nodding as if, no, that there can be different confusion that happen with young people. There can be, but you don't want to encourage it. And that's why in Rhode Island, you have people like Senator Tiara Mack and Teresa Tanzi and Val Lawson and Bridget Valadair and some of these other progressives, Rachel Miller, Providence City Council, where they condone. You have unhappy 11-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and they condone the progressive teachers that start to say to a young girl who finds herself unhappy. Now, she could be unhappy for a lot of different reasons. She could be unhappy because she's going through puberty. She could be unhappy because, the parents are having problems in the family. But what they tell them is, and this is where they condone it, they say to the girl, you'd be much happier as a boy. Or you have a young boy, and maybe, the parents are divorced, or the mother has a drug problem, or whatever the problem may be. Maybe he's a young guy and he's going through puberty, and maybe he has bad acne. Maybe he's socially awkward. Maybe his voice is changing, whatever. And they condone where you have these progressives in the schools. That's why they want access to the schools. And they start saying to the boy, you know what? You'd be much happier as a girl. I think that's your problem. You'd be much happier as a girl. And the progressives in Rhode Island, Magaziner, White House, McKee, Matos, and then all the thieves at the State House, that Val Lawson, Teresa Tanzi, Bridget Valadair, Sam Bell, some of the others, they condone it. In North Kingstown, you have that woman, Jen Lima. She's on the North Kingstown School Committee. Every child that wants to transition should be celebrated, and it should be hidden from the parents. Why are they in such a hurry by the way, Joe Rowe, it's Roofco, Rhode Island is who you want to contact. I was trying to message you on that. He asked me about who is the roofing company that I recommend. It's right there, Joe. Oh, it is. It absolutely is the State House. But there is something wrong with, and the teachers unions, they go along with it. And they're big on that the parents should not be involved. And it's just certain pockets of the state. You really saw it in South Kingstown, how they, have gone after Nicole Solis, how the teachers unions, led by Captain Creep, Bob Walsh, and others, how our local media will not acknowledge someone like a Nicole Solis that tries to point out that these teachers should not be going behind the backs of parents, and trying to get their children to transition to a different gender. It is cruel, and it's so much of it, it's irreversible damage that is done. So now what happens is, when you have enough of that, and when you have a Tim Walz as the governor and some of these others, then you get this: a 22-year-old total social misfit, transgender, calls himself Robin, was Robbie, and decides that he's so unhappy in his life, not only is he going to take his own life, but he is going to pull off a school shooting at a Catholic church, at a school where there are children in church, at a Catholic school, and doing it in the name of transgender rights. I go back to, as I've mentioned, and Justin Katz, who I give credit to, we do the segment Politics This Week. I'll even say we were basically alone, because the local media was celebrating. They thought it was great that Donald Anderson became the first transgender chair of the Women's Progressive Caucus of Rhode Island. That the whole thing was odd to me. Very strange. That's the person. Why? Here's just what I think would be a very simple question. Why can't it just be a woman? Oh no, it has to be Donnie Anderson. Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. If you're a boy and you don't want to become a girl, there's something wrong with you. And if you're a girl and you haven't been thinking about transitioning to become a boy, there's something like, what are you talking about? Listen, if you're 70 and you've decided you just want to grow your hair long, and for whatever reason you want to change your wardrobe and start wearing dresses, then like whatever. But stop with this. Oh no, my pronouns are now she and her. You know, it all started with the whole pronoun thing. But this is what Rhode Island and Massachusetts has become. Misfits. You know, Roger Williams was transgender because he had long hair. No, that wasn't it. That was the style at the time. So they try to color things in that way. That's not what it is. But it's definitely the problem with also a scenario with what we're seeing in Minneapolis with this shooter is the amount of copycats. And now you have to wonder, is there a transgender who is unhappy, who is now going to do some kind of a copycat act somewhere around the country? Somewhere. Now, keep in mind, what are they saying? They want Rhode Island and Massachusetts to become the mainstay. They want to be the beacon. As Maura Healey said, Massachusetts should be the trans capital. Why, what does that even mean? Why should Minneapolis and Rhode Island become the trans capital of the Northeast? And there's a full video manifesto of the Minnesota Catholic school shooter. You know, but I look to folks right now, things are just broken with the Democrat Party. Oh, it was previously Robin Westman. Robin Westman is now identified. Trans violence must be addressed. Yep. Calling on all trans individuals to take action. Minnesota Catholic schoolman ID'd as Robin Westman. Manifesto. Psychotic obsession with mass shooters. Well, no one thought that the behavior was unusual. Nope. If anything, was encouraged. We also, what we're seeing right now, at least in Rhode Island, is, and we're going to dwell on it more. No, hold on one moment, folks. What we're going to dwell on, well, not dwell on, but focus more and highlight more, is the element of that Providence City Council President Rachel Miller. She was in on the scam with the wind. We need to focus more. And what I'm going to try to do is some of the elected officials that are very, very extreme. Now, we were supposed to have a guest. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but it's also a fluid situation because of, you know, the breaking news with Minneapolis. But we need to highlight they're members of the Democrat Party. She's a Democrat. Tiara Mack is a Democrat. Enrique Sanchez is a Democrat. People, the Democrat Party, Governor Dan McKee is a Democrat. Matt Tosa is a Democrat. Seth Magaziner is a Democrat. Sheldon Whitehouse is a Democrat. Do you see there's something broken with the Democrat Party? Elizabeth Warren is a Democrat. Congresswoman Presley in Massachusetts is a Democrat. Markey's a Democrat. That Catherine Clark is a Democrat. There's something wrong. The Democrat Party is broken. The Democrat Party, they're all, it's one thing they're anti-Trump, but just their ideals right now. So if you're a Democrat right now and you vote Democrat, you're in with Senator Tiara Mack. You're supporting Enrique Sanchez. You're supporting that Rachel Miller. You're supporting McKee and Matos and Magaziner and Whitehouse and that Gabe Amo. You know, he is just, what has he accomplished? Nothing. Do you understand? They're not leaders. They're elected officials. Warren's going off the reservation. I like that. Like, when is it enough? I'll tell you what does need to happen, though, is we have to change the voting. We don't have legitimate elections in Rhode Island. And they're not back in session until January at the State House. The Rhode Island Republican Party, I'll say this, I don't believe they've done enough. They have to introduce legislation that would clean up our voting. Because right now, as I've said, this has nothing to do with President Trump. But we do not have legitimate elections in Rhode Island. If we had legitimate elections in Rhode Island, Seth Magaziner would not be in Congress. If we had legitimate, fair elections in Rhode Island, McKee is not the governor. And Matos is not the lieutenant governor. So it just needs to be tweaked just a little bit. You know, as I mentioned, as we do our segment Politics This Week, Governor McKee is running for re-election with 19% approval rating because he feels he knows how to game the system. They feel they know it's all about ballot collection. Campaigns should not be involved with ballots. Is that really too much to ask? Political campaigns should have nothing to do with ballots. They shouldn't be touching ballots. They shouldn't be collecting ballots. That's all that needs to change in Rhode Island. And I've tried to be supportive of Representative House Minority Leader Mike Chippendale. And in the Senate, you have De La Cruz. But when do they introduce the legislation to cut into that? That's all that needs to happen. If we had legitimate elections, McKee wouldn't even be running for re-election. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Remember, call Corey today. Free estimate, 401-283-9815. They could epoxy your garage. They resurface tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts. It's Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Call them 401-283-9815, 401-283-9815 for Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Well, folks, again, the big news, horrible school shooting, 2 dead in Minneapolis. By the way, I think there's at least 4, if not more, students that are right now in critical condition. And the shooter happens to be a transgender. A transgender is the school shooter, I think 21 or 22 years old. If you're listening to the radio, you're about to hear about it in the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, possible Road Patrol Live later, or I may be on assignment. We're not sure yet, but pray for those young children out in Minneapolis.